Wolfenstein's reboot aimed to usher in a return of the game series that originated the FPS genre by trying to recapture its sheer insanity through a new insane story, locations old and new, over-the-top gore, and characters you could actually relate to. However, in its attempt to push those boundaries, to reclaim its claim to fame, Wolfenstein as you may know it was banned in countries such as Germany, forgetting that with a new series, it also faced a new order. I'm not gonna lie, I feel almost weird for having to introduce Wolfenstein, but here we go anyway. Wolfenstein: The New Order was the first in a planned reboot trilogy aiming to revive the grandfather of the FPS genre in bigger and better ways. Initially planned to release in 2013, the game was delayed to its final release dates, the 20th of May 2014 everywhere else, and the 23rd of May in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. If you notice a pattern there, we'll get back to that later. Developed by Machine Games, the game faced several unforeseen hurdles, but managed to sell nearly 400,000 units in its release period and was met with generally positive reviews. But no aspect of it was loved by everyone, except the genuinely stellar music by Mick the Legend Gordon, which you may know from Doom 2016, Eternal, or Killer Instinct, among many others. In this video, we will go over the story, the marketing, the development, and the reception of the game to create the most complete picture of the development history of this game as I was able to put together. So let's get to the Nazi punching. The story takes place in an alternate history World War II. You take the role of BJ Blazkowicz, part of the US Army on its way to assault a stronghold, specifically to take out the head researcher of the regime known as Death's Head. The operation sees you facing off against the dramatically more technologically advanced Germans, and the mission fails. Your team is captured, dissected, and blown out of a wall, leaving a chunk of shrapnel in Blazkowicz's head, which disables him and traps him within his own body for 14 years as the regime takes over the entire world. Once he comes back to his senses after witnessing the cruelty of the regime once more, Doomguy's granddad embarks on a mission to link up with whatever resistance forces remain to finally finish what he started 14 years ago. A mission that brings him to the heart of Berlin, a concentration camp, the bottom of the sea, the moon, and worst of all, England. The story in itself isn't the most revolutionary thing to have ever been written in my opinion, as it is pretty much just a MacGuffin hunt from beginning to end until you are finally able to face this weirdo and deal the smallest blows to the regime. It also feels as though you are late to the party while everyone else has been trucking along with their own stories in the 14 years Blazkowicz was busy being a vegetable, but that is also kind of really the best part about the story. Because everyone there has had their own moments, their own trials and tribulations that we will never know about or see unless someone goes out of their way to inform you, as is the case with Klaus, a regime deserter turned resistance fighter after the ideology he subscribed to turned on him with the birth of his child who was born with an abnormality. And it is stories such as Klaus's that make the stories so much more interesting. Depending on who you choose to save in the prologue of the game, you may either get a monologue from Fergus Reed or Wyatt Probst's about how they are either too old or too young for this world, how the weight of living has been crushing them, and that BJ made the wrong choice, drowning in their own survivor's guilt. Or the small snippet about Jay, of how he had been running all his life, trying to stay out of trouble by simply being quiet, and now wanting to go out as loudly as possible during the raid on the Kaiser Circle. Or let's take a look at Klaus himself. Proud follower that he was, he never once stopped to think that what he was doing was wrong until it happened to him and made him see the evils of his ideology. It is worth pointing out that the game also never absolves him of his past. He himself states that he was a proud follower and would only remove his tattoo once they had eradicated the regime everywhere so that it could be an even prouder moment. Not a moment to be actually proud of, but a prouder moment. I may be looking into it a bit too much, but to me, that says that even now that he hates the regime, he holds some pride for it still, even if subconsciously. Someone on the other side of the spectrum is the ironically named Frau Engel, a regime higher-up prancing around with an ease that can only be achieved from being so secure in your position of power that you don't even consider the possibility that someone could be thinking of attacking you. Utterly ensnared by the derangement that infested the regime, she actively toys with you, playing games, monologuing, and then out of nowhere, snapping from that ease to an uncaring, sudden maliciousness born from that very same security, unnerving you, making you feel like you don't know when or if things will go down, whether you need to actually be ready to pick up the controller, or whether you can just relax in an in-engine cutscene. This carelessness that she displays in every scene she's in, even taking the time to monologue in your face after having her face crushed in an unnervingly intimate scene, makes you just want to stay away from her, or preferably get rid of her permanently. And by you, I mean the player, not BJ. Which is, at the very least, how I felt. And while we were talking about the regime, it is worth noting that it is a well-known fact that they used to essentially just take things from other cultures and bastardize their meanings for their own purposes. Like, for example, a certain special unit that used the Nordic letter that essentially meant sun and made it into a symbol of hate, or the Hindu symbol they co-opted and turned it into one of the most well-known symbols of hate on the planet. So much so that the original symbol is no longer even recognized as being part of the Hindu culture. This theft from other cultures to bastardize them for their own means is also represented here in this game. And if you've played it, you will know that the advanced Nazi tech seen throughout only came to be because they derived it from a different society entirely. It is revealed that they stole their advanced tech from the Dot You Should. I'm very sorry if I mispronounced that. A super secret, super advanced society of Jewish scientists that worshipped by researching and advancing knowledge. And make no mistake, this inclusion of bastardizing things from other cultures, like in real life, was not an accident. In fact, the creative director Jens Matthias, I'm also sorry if I mispronounced that, stated that nothing in Wolfenstein: The New Order was included by accident. Chief among those inclusions was an actual in-universe record label that would make songs set in the Wolfenstein setting or make covers of existing ones with slight adjustments called Neumond Records, hyping up people with some kick-ass music up until the launch of the game. But before any official announcement about the reboot was even made or the record label was established, Machine Games gave GameSpot and GameStar exclusive access for day one coverage of Wolfenstein. Both of them were high-profile gaming magazines specifically chosen for their strong presences in North America and Germany. GameStar was specifically chosen for this exclusive campaign as Wolfenstein: The New Order would be the first ever Wolfenstein to release there legally, given, Germany's history. Officially, the game was revealed during E3 2013, where the announcement trailer showed off the entire premise behind the Wolfenstein series to a new generation of gamers, specifically making sure to show off how famous historical moments were taken over by the regime as they swept over the entire planet. A hands-on demo was also available for the press, where the game was described as somewhat stagnant, as it felt like a lot of other shooters with nothing unique to it. This changed with the game's next appearance during Gamescom, where the hands-on demo there was described as the most exciting next-gen FPS, including Titanfall and Battlefield 4. A pattern I noticed during my research for this video was that with each hands-on demo the game journalists got their hands on, is that no one could actually decide whether the game was a fresh new experience or not. It was described as a game that took inspiration from B-movies and executed those ideas either very well and to its benefit, or missed the mark so much that it actually felt like a B game. It was at this point that Wolfenstein was delayed by almost half a year due to the team requiring more time to polish the game, which kept getting bigger and bigger due to them not wanting to leave any good idea on the cutting room floor, and to, make it feel like less of a B game. To get the ball rolling and to do a bit of cross-promotion, pre-orders of Wolfenstein: The New Order got shipped with access codes to the Doom 2016 beta. And speaking of pre-orders, among the different editions you could get, there was of course the standard edition, Edition, which just came with the game and the code for the beta. The Occupied Edition, which included an in-universe written 20-page travel guide to occupied England, a travel card holder, 3 postcards, and a Doom beta code. A special edition only sold in Australia, which came with a notebook, 3 postcards, and their respective envelopes. The Panzerhund edition, of which only 5,000 were made, which included a vintage Foot Locker style box with a number plate and clasp, a folder with 11 documents, be it maps, in-universe files, and an X-ray, a fully articulated Panzerhund, a steelbook case, and 14 postcards bound in a display book alongside 3 patches and dog tags. Due to the so far mixed reception from previous hands-on impressions, the team engaged in various interviews to make people more confident in the game and to sell the premise of Wolfenstein, calling killing the bad guys a timeless activity. And inevitably, these interviews at one point had to start tackling the topic of censorship in Germany. Because, in case you didn't know, Germany has strict laws when it comes to regime symbolism, with exceptions being made for films, books, and educational media, as those were considered art. Video games were explicitly not part of that exception, so for ages, any game that had regime symbolism in it needed to be censored heavily or outright wasn't allowed to be published here. Things got so ridiculous in Wolfenstein: The New Order though, and its sequel, that Germany had to adjust the law to include video games in its exceptions due to the massive backlash and international outrage it garnered. At the time of release, this was of course not in effect, so the German version actually was very different. So much so that when I bought this game for this video, I got 2 versions of the game. I did not know there was a German version for it because what the fuck? The level of censorship in this game was so unheard of that it went genuinely viral, not just in games media, but mainstream media, which of course got people interested, but also caused a bit of controversy about Germany being a bit too strict with the legislation, but that is a topic for someone smarter than me. And do keep in mind, this was viral in 2013 and 2014. This isn't like modern day viral where it's gone after a single day. This was an ongoing issue. Machine Games was bought by Bethesda in 2010, and right off the bat they asked whether they could take on a major project immediately, as if they weren't able to secure their position and some funding. Machine Games faced closure, with the leaders of the studio even having taken out loans so that the company could keep going. Luckily, and obviously enough, they got the green light to go ahead with Wolfenstein and were given quite a lot of creative freedom, so much so that they believe they never would have been able to make a game like the one we got in the end had any other company owned Wolfenstein. Like, what other studio would have allowed an entire section set in a prison camp? With this new project and a lot of space to explore this reboot, the team decided to go big and immediately make it a trilogy. But again, before any of that could take shape, the team first needed to spend 3 weeks doing something far less exciting. Everyone who's working off his job knows what comes next, so say it with me now: attend long, tiring, boring meetings. As the team had to first lay out the rough narrative structure of the story and get to grips with Tech 5, the engine that the game would be built on. Once production was properly underway, the team decided they should go with full performance capture to make sure every scene felt more real and alive, making the scenes where you're meant to feel uncomfortable really damn uncomfortable. Location selection was also more of a team thing. Rather than leaving it purely to the level designers or creative leads, the team decided everyone should be able to add some insanity to the mix, and asked everyone to pitch their coolest ideas for places the game could take you. Cool locations and real-looking in-game interactions are nice and all, but that is just something nice to look at. It doesn't really have any substance. Having never previously worked on a Wolfenstein game, the team first needed to figure out what defined the series. And here, one would think it was just killing Nazis, right? Well, yes, but actually, no. It is killing larger-than-life Nazis. And as simple as that premise is, it is too simple. How do you make an engaging story about fighting evil with nothing more to go off of? Like, hell, even games like Doom, where it is all about killing literal demons, have more to them than just let's kill demons. To find some inspiration for this problem, they looked at movies such as Inglourious Basterds, the original RoboCop, and even District 9, as those movies, while being insanely over the top, actually tackled some serious topics, with of course some levity in between. But there's obviously a key difference between how a movie compels you and how a game would compel you. In movies, you are told about the characters, their backgrounds, their motivations, and what they will do. In games, you are the character. So you may wonder how you make a story that is meant to be more than just taking out the trash, with complementary gameplay that is really just aiming and shooting. Well, by aligning your motivations with those of the main character. Your motivations are essentially just having a good time with the game and getting to decide what you do, and the only thing you may need to be provided with is a reason as to why you should care. And doing that, of all things, turned out to be really difficult, as not many people can identify with the massive slab of beef that is BJ Blazkowicz, who does not hesitate to absolutely demolish fascists even on his own. So what the team came up with was making people see themselves in BJ, not by simply hollowing him out and having him be nothing more than a player-controlled camera, but instead showing his worries and his desire to feel something other than the overwhelming need to end this war. Hence why we can always hear the thoughts of BJ. Scenes like the one on the train, after being confronted by Frau Engel, where he just wants to feel good for a bit and forget about the outside world, make this a lot easier, because we've all felt like that at some point, especially in modern times. What the team didn't want, however, was for BJ to be the next Nathan Drake. So much so that they specifically tried to hone in on what Nathan Drake's personality was and went for the exact opposite of that. Another way of making you identify with him is, ironically, something that followers of the regime totally lacked: empathy. The team wanted you to become invested in the NPCs, hearing of the stories of those around you, seeing how it scarred them, learning how it fueled their desire for a better tomorrow, and seeing the ramifications of the choice of who gets to live in the beginning, and how survivor's guilt plagues either outcome, with the survivor becoming your operator and the other becoming your enemy. Given that you essentially did that to them, it makes you feel the gravity of your choices more. By allowing you to learn about your companions and how your choices ultimately decided their fates, the team made it so that any offense committed against them and against BJ felt like an offense committed directly against you. And the villains specifically are meant to take advantage of that. Take Death's Head. God, that is hard to say as a German. This shriveled up thumb of a man was specifically written to be genuinely happy, doing what he genuinely loves, and loving the fact that he's alive to do it. He is meant to make you uncomfortable, forcing you to choose whose life ends and whose life becomes a living hell. He forces you to make decisions that will not have a good outcome no matter what, and it is meant to make you hate him on a personal level. All of that, every scene, every character, every choice, every gameplay section came at a cost, because the team was genuinely committed to satisfying every single department. There was constant friction. An awesome gameplay idea mechanically might not fit the story the writers were trying to tell, and neither side was willing to just roll over. The result was a lot of back and forth and a lot of compromise, trying to make everyone happy. Well, as happy as possible. How they figured out what was good enough and what wasn't for any given scene was also very simple, yet very complex. I'm starting to notice a pattern here. If the team was not actively looking forward to the scene, it was not worth keeping. At the very least, not how it was. A scene that nobody felt excited about either got taken behind the shed or whipped into shape. The downside of trying to get everything just right is that the game ended up running far longer than originally planned, and the release was pushed into 2014 due to how much content the team was working on. When it did actually ship, they managed to get everything in that they had set out from the beginning. So what about the multiplayer? Well,
not this time. Not this time. No, not this time. It's totally made up. Pure fiction. It's fiction. It's fiction.
There's none. It was never even put on the table. Not considered, not debated, not quietly cut. The team had a singular vision, and having players play as the guys you needed to kill and potentially let them win is not what these games were for. They just wanted to allow people to fight the scum of the earth in one of the most badass ways possible. And obviously they achieved their goals as the game was generally well received, praising strong character writing and work across the board. BJ's inner monologues were praised as the game felt genuine and managed to give him a lot more complexity, even though some of those inner monologues felt schlocky. And if you can hear my birds in the background, I am not editing them out. I'm so over it. Similarly, the alternate history setting was praised as well. It managed to go fully over the top with the presentation, but not in a way that felt goofy, but rather respected the subject matter by treating it with a seriousness that living in such a dystopia would truly demand. The combat, however, was not praised beyond its sound design. People bemoaned that it felt just like any other shooter and that dual wielding was more cumbersome than it was worth. The over-the-top gore for the time was able to spice up the fun, and the gradual additions to your arsenal made the game still feel fresh even after a few hours of gameplay. The same could be said about the skill system. It was praised for making you work for your skills to really make you hone in on specific playstyles, but those skills felt ultimately too insignificant to make out a tangible difference. All in all, people really couldn't decide whether the game felt too samey compared to other shooters or whether it was a breath of fresh air, which to me sounds like a decent enough start to a reboot, just like with Gears of War 4. I myself have to agree with the criticisms that the combat felt too samey and the skills weren't present enough to warrant caring about them. To me, beyond the rather memorable villains and decent shooting galleries, Wolfenstein: The New Order wasn't something I would put in my personal game hall of fame, but appreciated it for what it was. And it makes me hope that Machine Games was able to really make the games that came after The New Order stand out more, and that the recently rumored new single-player installment manages to wow everyone.